Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Jared with the Inner Squared Circle, and I have something very, very exciting for you here today. Now, we hear these success stories all the time about guys that are going to WWE and Impact and all these guys that are taking to the next level in their career. And I think what happens sometimes is that as the average independent wrestler, you can be like, okay, cool, that's great, but they're special, or they know something I don't know, or they had the magic formula, or, they were chosen. Like I think it's really easy to see someone that has, that is making it at a major national level that comes off of TV and they're making six figures in the independent level. Like, okay, yeah, but he had a TV run. He did this, he did that. Or, success is good for everybody in the business, but maybe it's not for me. Maybe like there's no way to be massively successful in wrestling unless you had a name value on TV, or unless you had, a big run, or, unless you're 6'10" and, 500 pounds or something like that. But I want to show you today, we have an amazing guest, and he is a true success story in this business. And I'm going to explain to you why. This is a guy where he is not a household name. That's not to knock him at all. He's immensely talented, but he hasn't had a 5-year run on TV. He's not a household name. And as a matter of fact, he's probably, if you were to just kind of look at the places that he wrestles, you would consider him to be kind of where some of you guys might be at the Inner Squared Circle, But here's the amazing thing. He has figured out a way to maximize all of his bookings. He gets paid up front. He is booked from now until next year. Okay, so just by the time we record this, it is September 2018. This guy is booked through 2019. Promoters have paid him up front, and he's on a waiting list. He's that booked because he's figured out a way to not only show what his worth is, prove his worth. He's immensely talented, but he's also gotten over, oh my God, I have to wrestle for free, or I have to do only the small shows. And he's been doing bigger and bigger shows. And it's so counterintuitive because you would think like, oh, well, if I'm going to charge money, I'm going to get less events. This guy has charged more money, increased his price, gotten raises, and he's turning down bookings. So why is that? So I think a lot of guys go through this whole mentality where in order to be successful, I have to downgrade myself, or I have to ask for less money, or I have to work for free, or be willing to do the battle royals or something like that. And it's the amazing thing is it's not about working for free. It's not about going cheaper. It's about a fundamental mindset shift, which is what's going to take you to the next level. So really the point of all of this today is I want to interview a guy who is in the Inner Squared Circle, who has not had a 5-year run on TV, but is doing massive next level success in his career. And his name is Darin Corbin. Darin, what's up, man? Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Jared. Thanks for having me.
No problems, man. I've been wanting to do this for a while because, I know a lot of people on the Inner Squared Circle group do know you, but if people are listening to this or this interview for the first time, they might not know you. The amazing thing, Darin, is you are all over the place right now. Is that true?
Yeah. Like, and the nice thing is there's a couple, I guess like one of the biggest things that I've been trying to do is like while still stationed in the Midwest, I've just started reaching out to other places while trying to find like an in, which I've kind of learned from this group. And it's also like helped me get the ball rolling to a couple places. And while I might not have stuff right now, there's a good chance like in a couple months I could have a few more options if everything goes according to plan.
That's amazing, man. So here's what I'd like to do. What I want to point out is that, for the wrestlers that are listening, to the guys in the business that are listening, I think it's really important for them to hear success stories of guys that are the road warriors, that are the guys doing this thing, that are hitting the ground running, not the people like, and it's not to knock Cody Rhodes or the Young Bucks because they're doing well independently, but they Cody especially had the WWE behind him, and now he's using that to further his career. You're really a grassroots guy. And you're still able to get booked constantly. So what I'd like to do really just briefly is if you could just introduce yourself to, kind of who you are, where you wrestle, what you're all about, just, a sentence or two, just so they understand where you're coming from. And that way people can really relate to you.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So my name's Darin Corbin, and I would say like I was on the ground floor for both groups, the Inner Squared Circle and Double Your Bookings. And we met back in Paragon long time ago. My thing is again, mostly like stationed in the Midwest, but the nice thing is like when we started talking, I remember it was just like the beginning of 2017 actually, and a bunch of stuff had just like changed. It was like I had bookings for a promotion for the entire year of 2017. We were doing Paragon, and Paragon stopped running at the end of 2016. So I remember kind of being like, is this kind of going to be, and, you know, again, it was like having to start over where it's like, oh man, maybe I can use these bookings as momentum. And there was like Minnesota is kind of interesting because like if you're here, there's 10 promotions that run the Twin Cities area. Not all good, but like there's 10 promotions. So what ended up happening is like when we started talking, I remember kind of like bringing stuff up, and it was like the question was, you know, like, why does that have to be your future? Why? Like, obviously you can do these things. Obviously you're talented enough to do these things, but like we brought it up when you were talking about like my character, and it's like, well, once people get to know you and once people get to do this, like once they see you, it works out well. How can you bring that across? So I remember I was like doing that kind of like shifted my mindset, because again, I could be as busy as I want to in Minnesota. I could have bookings, you know, pretty much every weekend, but they're not going to do anything as far as like make me grow as a performer or valuable experience. I could wrestle the same guy every week probably up here and be fine. But it was funny because over the course of 2017, I started applying a lot of the stuff, and like the two main mindsets were why sell yourself short when you're trying to go through and trying to do something that you want. If you have big ambitions, your goal should reflect that. And I remember reaching out to places, and like we always talk about, you know, like not getting a call back, or, you know, not hearing a response or read no reply. And like you get frustrated about that stuff. And I kind of like shifted my mindset on that when I was talking with you actually about it. And I remember you were saying like, hey, have you ever messaged somebody or somebody messaged you and they don't get back to you? And it's like, are they busy? Or, you know, like maybe you're driving in the car and a message comes through and you're trying to get back to them. So I tried to find alternate ways to like hit up more directly, like, hey, people I know. And that was another thing too, like switching. I didn't want to ask for help. That was the weird thing, but I was willing to put in the work. So I was like, well, if somebody can get me to a location, like I know people all from coast to coast, why can't I just ask and try and, you know, see, and then me still message? So what ended up happening is through 2017, it ended up being one of my best years in wrestling, because it was the first time I did extra work. I remember that sending the email. When I sent the email originally and going, if somebody reads this, I hope they laugh. And that was my only mindset, because I remember like just BSing the whole like about me section to making it sound like Baron and I are brothers. And I was just like, if somebody reads this, at least they'll laugh. And it was like a week later, I got a message back that was like, hey, you're invited to come to Milwaukee and Minneapolis.
And that's because your name's Darin Corbin. You sent your stuff to the office, and you basically made it seem like you and Darin Corbin were like long lost brothers or something like that.
Yeah. I made it sound like he was the more successful brother, but I could still hang. And I said, like, he's always been good at football and wrestling and everything.
Yeah. So you're just starting to show your
that.
personality in those emails?
Exactly. And like that was the thing. Like you told me, it was funny because like we were reading an email together that I was sending, and you read it back to me and you're like, how do you feel about this? And I was like, I'm bored. Like reading. Yeah.
Do you remember what that email was, by the way? Like, could you just like say it briefly on the phone? If you remember what that was.
Yeah. It was really generic. I mean, it was like, it's funny. It's one of those emails that everybody gets. And it was just like, hey, I really want to work for you. I would love to do this. Here's my resume. Here's a couple matches. If you're not too busy, thank you for your opportunity, or thank you for your time, which is funny because you're thanking somebody basically for like 2 seconds to ignore your email. So I was like, yes. I remember and you were saying, you were like, listen, your personality, your character, like when people get to know you and they see what you do, like that's what that character should be. Like you shouldn't just, you know, you should have them get to know you through your email. And I remember rewriting my email, and like, again, it's always tough because like I feel like I do comedy pretty well, but like some guys are always worried about being pigeonholed as a comedy guy. And I remember talking about it with you, and you were like, listen, that's your strong point. But we know from Paragon that we could do comedy with you, and then we could do this other flip, dark, serious Roddy Piper style character. And you're like, it's a matter of getting in, and what gets you in the door is comedy. So I was like, you know what, that's a good idea. And I like doing it, and it's fun. So then I started making every email as if I were the person reading it, that I would laugh. And I
Yes.
started like researching the place a little bit. Like I remember one message I saw, there was a promotion in New Jersey, and I messaged them, and I was like, their motto was, I can't remember the exact motto, but it was something about, we create a fun atmosphere. And like, in the subject line, that was another thing too. Like in the subject, I would always write, booking info or booking inquiry or something like that. And I'm, and like, if you think about a promotion, and especially after seeing some of promotions emails and inboxes, and you see it's just booking info, booking info, booking info. So I remember sending them directly. I put a motto I can get behind, and then put an entirely different message for that place. And and I got a response in 5 minutes, and the response just said, "Thank you for not sending us the most generic template we've ever seen. You took time to look into it."
Yes. So what I want to do, I want to take a second to highlight that. So basically, at first, you were sending the same, "Hello, my name is Darin Corbin. I would love to wrestle for you. Here's my resume. Thank you for your time. If you're not busy, get back to me." And then you're like, that's not working. I remember we had this conversation because if you're listening to this right now, there might be guys that are like 7'4", 500 pounds. They go show up to a promoter like, "Oh my God, this guy's a wrestler. We have to use this guy." Darin's an average sized guy. Like that's fair to say, right? So,
absolutely, yeah.
So what really set you apart, it's not necessarily that you walk into a room and you're booming, towering over everybody, but what would always set you apart was your personality and your characters and your ability to work inside the ring. And we always knew that if somebody could just see you work or just watch you do your thing or hear a promo or at least get in touch with you, they would fall in love with your personality, with your character. So the whole thing was, well, Darin, if your biggest strong point is your personality, you got to send them something that highlights your personality or at least gets them off of an email so it's not just words on a page and gets them to see you in person or gets you on a phone call with them.
And that was exactly it. Exactly it.
Because his personality shines. And then as your personality started to shine, you started to see all these other promotions where, instead of sending the generic email, you'd be like, well, here's a place, this message really resonates with me. Let me send a personal message as if we were friends or as if, I really wasn't, because you are really interested in working for them. So instead of just sending a generic cut and paste email, he was sending emails to people or Facebook messages that were congruent directly to that promotion. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. And like the other thing too is like there was another thing about it is, again, when you read this generic email, I think when we were reading it back, I remember like after the first 2 lines, like I think I had it already in my head because you were like, "Let me read this back to you. Let's check this." And like you read it back to me, and I was like, yeah, I know what he's gonna say. It's boring, and you make that decision after the first 2 lines. So like another thing that I started doing is I started just doing like almost a cover letter intro and just being like, hey, like how you said, like, hey, when you got a moment, I would like to ask you a question. I got a question to ask. And it's funny because like I've actually turned that in more to like rather than I got a question like, hey, can I work for you? Here's my email. I've actually been turning that into something else too, where it's like, I have a question to ask you. And like, I've had a couple places that's like, hi man, thanks for reaching out. What can I do for you? I was like, have you ever had a homeless character before? Like,
interesting.
Yeah. And just like interesting. Cause it's like, now I'm intrigued. What exactly is this guy going for? But like,
that's really cool. So you ask him, so it's not that you're just sending them a wall of text and regurgitating, "Please use me." You ask them like, "Hey, I have a question." Like, "Okay, what's the question?" And you ask something like, "Have you ever had a homeless character before?" Because you've done a homeless character. So that opens up like, okay, there's some interest here.
And the other thing about that worked out really well. And it's funny because like one of the things that's been really great for me having all that Paragon footage is ever since 2017, I have never sent out a match. I haven't sent out a match link unless directly asked, and that's only been twice.
But you get booked even without sending a match link.
Yeah, because like the things that I'll send them are like those short synopsis clips of me doing the characters that you had. And like the funny part is I remember in generic, like I was going through it and I remember this one where I was like, oh man, I wish I could remember the promotion that I messaged. But I was like, listen, I was like, it looks like you have a very wide range of characters. Where do you think this guy would fit in? And I sent him the homeless character. And like as they were typing, I sent another one. I was like, Or if you need something a little bit more serious, here's where I actually snapped. And like I sent that, and I just kept kind of like sending these things. And then the dude responded back with, haha, I get it. You can do a lot. We can find something for you, which is like, amazing. But I haven't had to send a match in a year and a half, because like my thing is if you look at what I do and you're like, okay, this guy is a character, will he be able to, like, if you're already interested enough to watch that and you're curious to see if I can have a match, I have one ready to go. But you can search me online and like look for my stuff. So like if you're intrigued enough to go and look, you can find certain things. But like it's just funny because my appeal is, you and Jared, you and I have talked about this all the time, and this is a concept that comes up in the like inner squared circle a lot, is there are so many guys right now who, like we talk about that artist mentality and whatever. But like I've talked to you about it where I feel as though it's dudes you have guys who are really good, and then you have guys who are inspired by them, but they're more like watercolor artists. Like they just kind of like finger paint.
Yes.
And we have all these dudes doing the same thing, and it becomes watered down just because they think that that's what they have to do. And that's actually been my luckiest in all of this, because like I assume that just as generic as it is in ring, some of the generic emails that those generic dudes are sending is my competition. So like, what can I stand out with? What can I do to make that work? What can I do to make it different? That's been something that's been like an absolute like eye opener, because it was like, imagine you have 10 guys going for the job. Imagine it's actually a wrestling show. What's the thing that you do differently? And I remember I could be like, well, I don't do anything that anyone else does, either can't or don't want to. And you were like, use that. Yeah. And that's from then on, that's what I've been doing. And like, it's been really nice to like, also like you're one step ahead of everybody else coming in. It's like, it's really crazy because like we have a training school here too. And a lot of the kids that come out of the training school, like they're just, all right, we're dudes on a show. And they'll find matches because they're new, and they'll find promotions because like I said, there's 10 of them here. But if you want to go beyond that, it's what's going to bring you to that next level. And we talked about it, like not only being a big personality, but making yourself a big star, because like if you know what you're capable of and you're confident, people like that. It radiates, and that's what attracts people to like wanting to use you. Not somebody who's like, oh, I think I can help you. It's I know I can. That's the difference. Yeah, it's the I know I can help you. And Darren, so what I want to do is I want to highlight some things that you said, because I have to keep in mind that people that might be listening to this for the first time, there's all these prejudices. Oh, he said the word character. That means he's doing funny, over the top, zany characters. That's not what he means. So, and here's the thing, Darin has taken the stuff that I've taught him through Double Your Bookings or through how to email people, or especially our one-on-one coaching program. And I would produce Darin one-on-one at these shows with these characters. He has taken what I've taught him to a new level. That's why I wanted to introduce him to you today. And that's why I really want him to share the story. But when he's saying character, yeah, okay, so Darin can do characters as far as, wrestling gimmicks, but here's what he means. Number one, I didn't realize you didn't send matches, but when he says he can do characters, here's where Darin really excels. Now, we talked about he's not 7'5", and he hasn't come off a major run on TV, but here's where he excels. He excels in his facial expressions, in how he slows down. He excels in the spaces between the moves. So he'll do something, and then he'll slow down, and he'll look at the camera a certain way. And then that everybody stands up on their feet. Like, I want you to picture Randy Orton when he gets that look in his eyes, like he's going to do something. Like, Darin is really good at the small idiosyncrasies that is all around the moves. So if Darin sends somebody a demo reel where it's all these things of how he makes his entrance, or he does a move and then he looks a certain way, or he gets a reaction because of the way he moved a certain way. It's not that he's doing these crazy over the top, like, look at me, everybody, I'm a clown. Like, what he means by character is he's doing all the things. Like, what makes a good actor isn't that you can recite the lines. What makes a good wrestler isn't that you can do the moves. What makes a good actor is the emotion, the spacing, the how does he word the things? How does he take ownership of that? So you're saying that you're getting booked by not even showing full matches, but by showing all these little things that you do around the matches. Is that true? Absolutely. That's 100% how it goes. And that's what makes you stand out, because everybody is just sending, here's move. Well, everybody can do the moves, but how do I know I want to use you? It's actually really funny. Like this year, one of my buddies, I was Actually, I think he's in the group, which would be good because my buddy Mick Drake, I just did a show in Chicago, and like this is the other funny part about it is it was one of those matches because, you know, I feel like everything's got a place on the card, but we were doing the main event and it was a big title match and everything. And I remember that match being like, I want to show people that I can do stuff in ring that people might not know that I can do for one way or another. And I was like, I want to moonsault to my feet. And then I'm going to hit a Hurricane Rana, like when you come charging back at me. And I remember, and now, first of all, I didn't do it just for the sake of doing it. We made it work. So I just want to throw that out there. But the funny part was he came up to me and goes, I didn't know you were capable of doing that kind of stuff. And I just kind of jokingly, I said, I was like, I know, I like to surprise people with what I do. Because like my thing is like you see guys who give away everything all at once. Also, when it comes time for character, the thing I want to touch base on is like you see guys that come in and like they have a character, like I guess like a prop or something. And then the match starts and it's gone. They're just a dude that wrestles. And like the thing is like it's not that they're incorporating anything they're doing. It's just a thing that they do. And they look just like every generic dude on like the rest of the card. I guess like matches 1, 2, and 3. It's like, oh, cool. The guy in match 2 had like a funny like top hat or whatever, but he still wrestled like everybody in the match. So that's where I tried to stand out too, because like a lot of times with like character stuff, we always forget that what brought us into wrestling, like as honest as we're going to be, like no one really goes in and they're like, yeah, the thing that really got me into wrestling was I really like Randy Savage. He had that really good match with Steamboat. Like I feel like we start to appreciate that later. Mm-hmm. But when you're 4 or 5, you're like, Randy Savage talked funny and I loved it. You know, like that's a kid. You know, like as a kid, you think like, man, he wore like loud outfits. He was like crazy. He looked like he was going to like explode at any time. Mm-hmm. And we forget that like moments and characters are what drew a lot of us in.
Yeah.
And the matches come later, absolutely. And also with this, you know, it's funny because like we also like jokingly put this in perspective. And there are a lot of guys who aren't very good wrestlers that have just seemed to find a connection because they're great characters. And, you know, and vice versa. It's whichever one. But like the thing is that goes back to what we always talk about. There's no one way to do certain things. But if you're looking at wrestling as a mixed bag, yeah, you definitely don't want to see 6 of the same matches. But if even that one guy who's not a very good wrestler goes out there and he's a good character, he's entertaining. But if you get a guy who's a good wrestler and a good character and he's confident, he looks like a star. And that's exactly something you can build around.
I agree with that. I agree with 1,000%. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to shift focus to bookings and your strategy. And here's what's so impressive. You have taken what I've taught in double your bookings and one-on-one and the stuff that we produced in person. You've taken it to a whole new level. And so here's what I want to point out. There's a story called the 4-Minute Mile. And basically for years and years and years, nobody thought that it was possible to run a mile in under 4 minutes. So everybody was trying to do it. Nobody could do it. Nobody could do it. And then finally somebody did it. Somebody did a mile in like just under 4 minutes. And the crazy thing is, even though it took years and years and years for anybody to break that milestone, once one person did it, everybody goes, oh my God, that's possible. And other people started to say, oh, it's not impossible, I can do it too. So more people started doing a mile in under 4 minutes. So here is why this is so important. Darin is a wrestling journeyman. He's in the Midwest, and he went from 2017, you had lost essentially all of your bookings. You didn't know what was happening. Your biggest bookings were going away. I remember there was a lot of uncertainty happening. Fast forward to today, you're turning bookings down. People are paying you up front, and you're booked through the end of next year.
Yeah.
What changed for you? So where did you start 2017? We don't have to get into every little detail, but what I want to point out is, where were you? What changed? And where are you now? And then how have you been able to get these bookings and get paid up front?
Okay. So it's funny because like a lot of it, I will have to give credit, ends up being one of those weird perfect storms, but I also feel it's a perfect storm that you make for yourself. And I'll get to that in a second. So, all right. So 2017 rolls around. And like, it was really frustrating too, because like one of the promotions I wrestled for literally gave me all the dates. I had just talked to him a week before because I hadn't heard anything. And just to kind of give you an insight on how frustrating wrestling can be, my cousin worked at the venue that we were running, and when I didn't hear anything or no one saw anything from my friends in this area, I messaged her and I was like, "Do you know anything about this show happening?" And she was like, "We have no signage, no nothing." And this is like the Monday before the show. So like red flags go up, all this stuff. Later that week, announcement gets made. We're canceling everything. We unfortunately can't do this. And I was like, I just talked to you about who's booked, and so like, I remember being so irritated because like, I think a lot of times we think to ourselves, well, this is just this is what independent wrestling is, like, I'll get you next time. I don't have the money for you now. Like, you're okay taking this, right? Do you really need, and all that stuff. And so between that and like, I would say like Paragon was probably my biggest thing where I was like, introduced me to a lot of, I think like a lot of new markets and a lot of like, it got me a little bit more exposure, which was good. And then that was gone. And I was like,
and real quick, so what Paragon was, guys, Paragon's been about 3 years ago, which is crazy for me because I loved work. It was one of my favorite times in wrestling. But
Same.
What Paragon was, it was a weekly episodic television show. It was airing on Fight TV. And they were filming out of Las Vegas, and they had top-notch production. I was involved there. They had agents like Matt Stryker, D'Lo Brown, and they had a lot of up-and-coming talent, and they mixed it with name talent, like guys like Gangrel, who were basically agents, but could be agents while they were wrestling, so they could teach the guys. So it was it was basically like, like the AWA type of thing where it was all these up-and-coming guys that could be something, and they're going to be something in a couple of years, but AWA just didn't work. But all of a sudden you see Hogan and Mean Gene and WWE or Bobby Heenan. Like that, AWA was a breeding ground, and I felt like Paragon had that same type of vibe with a lot of new guys and a lot of veterans helping the new guys, and the production was on point. So that's just to give everybody a kind of a background. That was on Fight TV, and it was doing good numbers. I remember hearing that if Ring of Honor was number 1 on Fight TV, Paragon for its run was number 2 behind Ring of Honor. And I've heard that from Fight TV personally.
And like a lot of that's, yeah. And again, that was like one of the most fun things. And like, I felt like that was starting to like, I was starting to understand character stuff and understand my worth and my value and all that stuff. And then that was gone, and then I lost all those dates. And, like I had stuff here and there, and it was whatever. It's like local show here, and that's how it worked. But definitely not enough to be like, okay. So we started talking a little bit, and I was looking at it, and, like, I never wanted to be a guy, like, just because I live in Minnesota, I didn't want to be a guy who was a Minnesota guy. Like, a lot of guys do that. They get stuck in a habit. And it's funny because, like, I feel as though, like, we've talked about this one, you stay in the company you keep. And another thing is I kind of had blown off another promotion where it wasn't good for me. I wasn't a good fit for them, but maybe like in the sense of buzz, they would have had more. So it was like, you know what, I got to choose. But like, again, even in the same sense, money wasn't really like there. It was definitely not enough to be like happy about what I was doing. So we started talking, we started doing this stuff. And I remember like a big shift in it was, I was starting to try and I reached out to a couple places. There was a spot that I had messaged, and I was like, listen, it's a place I work for consistently now. And I remember after you and I had talked a couple of weeks, it was all about knowing your value. And I walked into him and I was like, hey, I need to talk to you after this show, and I got a deal for you. And you can either, and basically what I said to him was, I was like, you can either tell me yes, or you can tell me to fuck off. It's whichever one. And that's all I said. That was like my line. Mm-hmm. So after the show, we sat down, and I remember sitting there talking and with you, and I said to him, I was like, here's what I want to do. I want to be on all these shows. I don't have anything that is a consistent yearly thing right now. I want to be on all your shows, and I want to make you a top priority. But in order for me to do this, I need this. And I asked for double my pay. I asked for what I could do. And I remember the line was, I talked to him, and he was fine with it, and he was great. And I was like, oh, wow, that was actually pretty easy. But I just came in with a plan. I was like, well, that worked out well. And he goes, yeah. And his business partner at the time, I remember he went to him and I talked to him, and I remember him going, he was like, oh, that'd be great. He's like, so what can we do to get you over? And I was like, for real? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, listen, I'm very confident in what I can do. Give me a microphone for 5 minutes. I'll get myself over.
And here's something interesting, Darin, because this is the first time I'm hearing this part of the story. Isn't it funny how when you asked for more money, they said yes, and because they said yes, they're paying you more. Now they have to value you more on the show. How can we get you over? Because now they have to make sure they're getting their investment back. Does that make sense? So a lot of people go, how can I do it cheaper so I can get booked? And then they end up devaluing yourself. It seems counterintuitive because like, oh, if I ask for more money, they're not going to book me. But you actually asked for more money, which made your value stand out more, which made them have to put you in a better spot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's what I wanted. I wanted that challenge too, because like I kind of I actually really like getting thrown into a new opportunity, because like we talked about comfort zones and certainty and uncertainty, and like actually a big part of it was like the uncertainty challenge of it. It was a huge like thing that kind of revitalized what I was doing. So like I got that, and I was like, all right, cool, I can make this happen. And like, not to dwell on an individual story there too much, but like they gave me the mic, and like I changed my character in 5 minutes. I actually took my Fitbit out and like recorded me for 5 minutes. And I used that as part of my like character. And I was like, listen, I'm going to only take 5 minutes. And I just changed the entire character and went with it. And it worked. It worked for that place. So going from there, then that's when I messaged and went to do extra work. And I remember we had just talked.
And you had never worked for WWE as an extra before, ever. You had never been invited ever.
No, and I had like no idea how to do it. And you were like, you know, so many people there. Like, why haven't you tried? And like my thing was, I remember telling you, I was like, I don't know. I don't feel like I look the part of what they want, or I'm like the shape that I should be in. And you were like, you have friends there. Like, have your friends ever told you to message them? And then I was like, yeah. And you're like, you should just do it. And I remember sitting there typing. We had just talked about emails and like not being bored. And like, that's how I said, I wrote like this about me section, sent it, and was like, if I just sent like the biggest wrestling company a message with intent of just being like, I hope somebody reads this to laugh, I think I'm good.
Yes.
Because like, if there was ever taking a chance where it's like, oh, if I should be professional, I was like, you know what? No. I was like, you know that there is a guy named Darin Corbin out there, because you got the name is very similar. So like, let's go with this. And it was funny because when I got there too, like the thing was doing extra work. Like a lot of the guys were like, why haven't you done this before? Why haven't you ever tried? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't think. I said the same thing. They were like, dude, if they want you to lose weight, they'll make you lose weight. If they want you to do a character, you'll do a character. Like.
Yeah. So isn't that interesting where, so you go to WWE for the first time and the WWE wrestlers were like, hey man, why haven't you been here before? Because you already knew people and you're like, oh, I didn't think I was invited, but you were the only person not inviting yourself. All you had to do was send the email.
Yeah. And I don't know why. I think that was just like I guess that's just like a whole mindset thing that like you, and so like it was really funny because like the other thing too is I remember like this is another thing that's come up in the Inner Squared Circle, but like just walking like you belong. Mm-hmm. And like it was so funny because like I remember I ran into like every time I turned I saw like a friend. I was like, dude, I haven't seen you in like years, and like knowing everybody, and like it was really weird. And I remember asking like one of my friends who's a writer, and he was like, yeah, he's like, if you're just a dude, like that's what people like about you. And it echoed exactly what we said. Just be a dude, don't be a weird whatever. And like that went really well. And I remember being very like revitalized with everything, because I was like, this was so much fun. I had this misconception of what I thought it was going to be like, because I had heard stories in like 2009, 2010, like dudes getting blackballed for like eating catering in front of Undertaker. And I thought I was like, oh, I'm going to be on pins and needles and eggshells. And it was different. And then fast forward, I was like, if I can apply this, why can't I just do this normally? And actually throughout the course of the year, just to kind of sum up some things, I remember one of the deals that I did is, like going back to Oregon, which was, with WC, which was the sister promotion of Paragon. I went back and I did a show, and I remember talking with the promoter and being like, listen, can I talk to you privately, and we did. And I said, you know, before we split the rosters, we don't have a roster to split. You know, I want to be here. You know, I'm an asset. You know, I help your guys. I can do so much for this promotion. Let me be here. And ever since then, I've been back every show. So that worked out. So I got that back, which is great. I started reaching out to places, doing the same thing with like the email, but just making sure that they were customized. And it was that year was my first time I went to Denver. I got flown to Denver to do a show. I started lining up like random stuff. I remember you and I had discussed certainty and uncertainty, and you're like, yeah, but sometimes certainty isn't great because you could wrestle all the time once a week. But is it challenging you? And then I lined up in May. It was like the first weekend in May. You were like, try something, step out of your comfort zone. And I remember doing 3 shows for 3 companies that I was making debuts for in Wisconsin and Chicago and all that stuff. And I did 3 shows. And as a result, I was like, I actually did pretty well, you know, because like, you know, new venues to like sell merchandise and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, this is great. And then out of those shows, I ended up meeting people that connected, where I met a dude who normally runs shows in New York, where a guy who runs shows in Indiana, guy that knew the guys who run the big shows in Tennessee. You know, so like, I was like, oh, this is crap. I was like, I'm so stuck in my ways that like, this is how I felt. I was like, I'm so stuck in my ways that after like 13 years, you know, like I feel like the booking should be coming to me. And sometimes you just need to jump back in. It's like when, you know, you go to a high school reunion and people are like, I remember you graduated with me, but I don't know what you're doing now. So you just show them what you're doing. You know? So it's kind of a weird world. But like by the time like mid 2017 had rolled around, like it was crazy. Like I started applying stuff that we were doing. Cause like the other thing too is my shoot job. Like I'm a driver's ed instructor. And like by the middle of 2017, I had moved to the Twin Cities. My fiance now, we got engaged in 2017 because we were like, well, there's no right time. Might as well do that. So that was another big milestone. But I work for a company now that got me to the Twin Cities, pays me more money, has more options. I just got a promotion this year. So like I started applying it to everything. So like by the end of 2017, I was in a completely new location. I have a spot that like a home that I like, that I've actually loved. I'm at a job that I love. That's the first thing out of their mouth is we will work around pro wrestling. And like, it was just because I confidently told them like the scenario of what I do. And so like, I started using like all these elements to start doing that. And now fast forward to where we're at now, it's funny because like, okay, so one thing I want to kind of like make sure I establish so it doesn't seem like I have this scenario where I do have dates all the way in 2019. I also I'm waiting on 3 promotions to give me all their 2019 dates. I'm going to try and piece the rest in. But like I have a couple promotions that are either like my lower paying scale, and I've talked to them this year and I've been like, listen, I'm going to start doing these shows. I'm going to start doing this. And here's the deal. I want to continue working for you. You know, I'm an asset. You know, I do this. You know, I draw this. I bring this many people in. You know, I advertise for you. I do videos, all that stuff. But these places are offering more for my services. And if you want me to, I'll gladly do your shows. But it depends where you want me to be on a priority list. And like the funny part is one of the promotions in North Dakota, they had a management switch. And truth be told, like I was, again, back to not wanting to deal with the BS again. Because I was like, this is the 3rd time this company shut down. It's like, dude, like, here's the deal. If we're going to do this, we have to figure out a way. Because, like, I can't take your bookings and have them cancel. That doesn't work. Like, I can wrestle other places. I can make sure I get my guaranteed money. You can't cancel stuff on me. So if you want me on these shows, I'm going to have to ask for a deposit. Like, that's just how it goes. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I can't do this show, but I could do your next one. But we don't talk about it until the deposit is in there to hold. Otherwise, I'm going to take other bookings that come along. That day, actually in 2 minutes, he was like, what's your email? And it said, you have money. And I was like, well, I guess I'm booked for that show. And so like, that's the new agreement there. And then I have like these new places that are like, hey, we would like to do this. And like, you know, some of them are like real shady or whatever. And so I don't think they're going to happen. But a lot of times, like what I do now is I'm like, listen, this is what places do. I'm waiting on a couple things on my schedule. I don't know if I hear back from that. Well, isn't it open right now? Listen, if you want me on the show, here's the deal. Send me a deposit. I'll do it for this. And I've had a promotion that's like, okay, cool. Here you go. And I'm like, oh, all right. Well, I guess that works. Because the thing is I have every intent to just take something else. But it's not because I'm trying to big league anybody. It's just because for what I want personally, I can go somewhere else. And what I want to do with my time, I want to make it worth my while. So it's like, yeah, I could take these shows and I could do this. And like when places reach out, this is the other funny thing. This is the other crazy part. A place will reach out to me and be like, hey, we want you on our shows. And I was like, well, unfortunately, I can only do this show. Oh, well, we have dates all the way to the end of the year. I know, so do I. And these promotions pay me this. Oh, okay, well, like we can do, if you can't do this or match that or pay me more than that, I'm not going to do it. I can't do that. I already have promotions that have been good to me, that I have a good working relationship with. And if you want to get in the mix, we have to start kind of fresh. And I just make it very logical, very upfront. And even now, the other thing too is I just had this happen. I just had it happen with a promotion where one of my dates for this month got canceled. And we go back a long way. Some stuff happened. But the way it went down just kind of like, it did. It irritated me, but there's no reason to put him on blast. There's no reason to bury him. He's still a friend of mine. And I just told him, I was like, here's the deal. If I can't get this level of commitment, there seems like there could have been a way to fix this. In this case, I had another booking for him like later. And I was like, listen, if you're going to take away this with no way to reimburse me or help, I'm going to politely decline this other booking and take the one that I know is going to happen. I can't run this risk. And he was like, listen, I completely understand. This is my mess up. It was my mistake. I was like, I hope you get it. Like, I have no ill will towards you. I don't hate you. I'm not going to bury your company online. Listen, we've always been good. You've always tried to be good to me. But you have to understand, I have to go with something reliable in this case. I cannot run this risk happening again. And the other part too is, it's really hard for some promotions to get this, but being a driver's ed instructor, I can sit in the car for 4 hours on my ass and make more money than some promotions offer. And I was like, I'm just going to stay home and not hurt my body,
So because you don't necessarily need it, and because you're not begging for the bookings, you're like, hey, look, here's how it is. It's almost like they're coming to you, or they're willing to pay that. Exactly.
And it was really funny because like what was put into perspective, because like it's I remember listening to the part with with Mike Bucci, with the Simon Dean stuff, where it was have an outlet outside of wrestling. Yeah. And I think what happens is people get so driven and like, oh, you got to sacrifice, you got to do this, you got to, you got to be all in on this job. And I'm like, why? My dream is to like, it's cool to me that I work not a full-time job. I get to call my hours at a job I love, and I get to wrestle and make money doing it. And like, that's the thing. Like everyone's like, well, if you want to make money, like, why do you do this? And I was like, it's fun. And then people always refer, and they go and they're like, well, like, listen, you got to start thinking seriously about it and be fun. I was like, no, listen, you're not hearing me out. You know what the best part about doing something that you find is fun is when you get paid for it. It makes you have a lot more fun.
Yeah.
Because when you're like, I can go home and I can afford on a part-time schedule being able to do this for fun and get paid for it, that's great.
And isn't that funny how those people are like, oh, well, you have to take this seriously. And like, it's almost like in their mind, in order for you to take it seriously, it means that you can't get paid for it. Like, it's so weird.
Or like you can't have a side job. And I think that all the time. I'm like, listen, we're not in a world where there is really anything running, like it's not as common. There's weekday shows, yes, but there's not like, it's not like in England where you can wrestle 6 days a week and that's what you do because that's how it's set up. Like you can hustle and get a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, if you're willing to travel and willing to do this. And if you're able to like line it up, but most of our stuff is still Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And like for me, if I didn't have a job, like I would be okay, but it'd be real tight. Like I'd have to make some sacrifices. And when you and I were talking, I was like, wait, why do I have to make sacrifices for anything? Why can't I have everything I want? And if that means like I might work an extra 15 to 20 hours a week at a job that I enjoy, that's not a sacrifice. That just makes it so I have more money to do extra stuff. Like, I'm a sucker. I like to go out to eat all the time.
Yes.
Like, I love, like, I want to be able to do those things. So because I have that as a backup, it's actually weird in the sense where it's like, no one has that leverage over me to be like, well, do you want the booking or not? Well, no, because I'll work for 3 hours at my job, not hurt my body, get to spend time on a beautiful day and do other stuff and be fine.
So you set up your career where the leverage is in your hands and not in theirs, and that's because of your mindset shift.
Exactly. And that was a big thing too, because like I didn't start looking at what I was doing as like, like, it's funny, you think of it, you're like, well, I'm a pro wrestler, and that's not what I did. Like, now I started switching it where like I think a lot of guys don't take pride in the fact that what they do in their life. I think they're always like, I do this to support my wrestling habit, or I do this to, hopefully someday I don't have to do this life, and like, it's tough to find a job that you love. And that's true. But like what I started doing is I was like, wait a second, my life is my two things. I'm a pro wrestler and a teacher. That's not something to be ashamed about. And like a lot of the stuff that I apply in promos is stuff that I learned by practicing in my classroom, like cadence and stuff like that. So I'm using like my real job as like a sounding board to try things for promos. And like, it's weird because everything's a learning experience and everything works. But now coming up on 2019, like I said, I'm still waiting on 3 promotions that could give me dates to the end of the year. And I need those to fall in before I start taking all the little stuff that files in. And as I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I don't have these dates yet. And while I take a couple for 2019, the ones that I feel like are paying me my top or what I like, or, maybe it's a plane ticket that I could get flown in. So it's good to line those things up. I have these other places that are like, well, do you want to sit and wait for it? Yeah, I actually am going to wait for it, because unless you want to do this, here's what you want. If you want me to commit right now, here's what you need to do. That's just the requirements. That's just the criteria. That's what we need to do. And like if places are like, I can't do that, it's like, it's okay. Somebody else will.
Yes.
Like, and that's my mindset now. And like, it's funny because like, also in the same sense, a big reason why I'm not taking a lot of the bookings is I remember like a local promotion came up to me and kind of like snarkingly was like, well, we just got all our dates for the end of the year and they're going fast. So if you want to hop on, you got to let us know soon. And I was like, I think you guys are fine without me. And like, I remember the look that they had and they were like, okay. And I was like, listen, if you guys really want me and you want me to be a part because you think I'm going to be an asset, by all means, when that time comes, I will let you know. But if you're like, these dates are filling up because you don't care who's on the dates and those are the guys you want to go with, we are clearly on 2 different levels.
And what I love about this is that this is such the opposite of the prevalent mentality right now, which is like, oh my God, to get booked, I have to go cheaper, and just drive for free and show up and hope I get a spot, and then probably not, and then I'm going to volunteer at the concession stand so that way maybe next time I can do it. It's the complete opposite, and it's almost like it's almost like the more you do that, the more of that you keep getting. And it's weird to make the change that you made, but then once you make the change that you made, which is just like, it's a fundamental psychology shift. It's like everything else lines up. So basically, so to sum this up in some ways, so in 2017, you had lost most of your primary bookings. You didn't really know what to do. You got involved in coaching and the Double Your Bookings program. Your mindset shifted and you started finding your value. And when you found your value, you were able to, communicate in a way that showed your strengths first. You were able to get booked for WWE for the first time ever, which said, oh, okay, this is possible. Mm-hmm. And then you started using that, not casualness, but more like, okay, I can be myself. I can use my personality. And you got booked for more local companies, more companies spread out. And then you started getting paid up front. You started getting a waiting list. And now you're booked, through a little bit of 2019. And have people giving you deposits. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, yeah, 100%.
So what would you say, either through coaching or through Double Your Bookings or something that we might have talked about? What do you think was one of the biggest things you took away that helped you to make this happen, or helped shift your mindset so it wasn't the way it used to be?
I think the biggest thing is I mean, like, not in these exact words is how we did it, but like, people gravitate to people who are stars or who feel as though that they're confident enough in their ability. Like, I think the funniest thing, and like, there's not one particular person that I'm going to say that does this, but I see it at every show. I cannot, we point out so much random stuff in the inner squared circle that when we're like, this behavior that people do is so weird. So I didn't start thinking about it. I'll give you a good example. Like when people come up to you and they like shake your hand and they're like, hey sir, how are you? And they give that casual bow.
Yes, the casual bow.
I'm just like, first of all, like I'm probably not much older than you, so you don't have to call me sir. And second, like, what culture did this come from? Because like it's not it's not like even it's not an American regional thing.
No,
so now
I've never seen it ever.
And then, like, so it's crazy. Like, let me give you this scenario. I think what it does is it makes me look at everybody else, and I look at everyone else as like, this is my competition for being on shows.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's 10 of us, and there's guys who are like, hey, and then I come up and I'm like, hey man, it's great to see you. Like, it's awesome to finally meet you and like say my piece and whatever. I was on a show with 4 new guys that I had never met this past weekend. Guys shook my hand, kind of did a polite bow, just gave me his name, whatever. Met one of the guys. He was like, dude, just so you know, I've been a fan of some of your stuff. It's so cool to be on a show with you. Like, you're awesome, dude. And I was like, oh man, I think that's cool. We just started talking and I was like, this is a guy I could get along with. Like, that's cool. And he was my favorite. And in his match, it came out too. Like, you saw it where it's like, oh, this guy's not only comfortable backstage, but he's comfortable in a ring. Yeah. I think the deal is just walking in. When I started thinking of wrestling as any other job, that's what changed my mindset.
Yes.
Like, couldn't believe it. Like, when I was like, oh, what would somebody that wants to hire me want? And like, again, I'll kind of go to this. Hopefully I don't trail too far. But like at my new job, I'm getting promoted into the office. And the strict reason that came up, number one, was because you seem like we are a very small office, and you seem, out of the rest of the instructors, like the kind of person that we could tolerate being around for multiple hours on a day.
See, that's a huge point. It's almost like in the wrestling business today, everybody's become this weird, scared, I'm going to give you the weird bow, that it's like the people that actually stand out are the people that just act like normal, well-adjusted human beings.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
It's like so rare. And I had somebody come up to me that was like, came up and shook my hand and shook, like whatever. And he was like, hey, I hope I wasn't interrupting. I was like, no, you're fine. I was just actually going to go right back to the conversation. Like, hey, you walked in, you said hi, like no big deal. And he's like, yeah, I was like, dude, seriously, it's okay. Like, you don't have to explain yourself on this one. Like, I'm not going to get hot at you for like saying hi,
No,
like,
you're not.
It's
You're
weird.
not.
And like, once you start seeing like outside of that, but like, it was really funny and it's selfish in the same sense of like how you are supposed to feel, where you're like, well, I'm not supposed to take initiative. But then when you're like, wait a second, everybody who's ever been successful is the one who's like, I know I can do this. Let me do this. Let me take action. And like, you swing and miss. Okay. You're either you get called out on strikes or you just get called out looking, like, which one do you want to do? Do you want to try or do you want to not try? And that's another way I look at it.
That's so true. And to shed some light or to add to this, I remember when I was doing dark matches and tryouts and stuff like that backstage, there would be like, a bunch, maybe like 4 or 5 extra talent. And I was one of the 4 or 5. And it was crazy because I would look at the other 3, 4 people and they were hugging the wall and like literally almost shaking and terrified. And because I was like a fly on the wall, I'm like, oh, that's what we look like. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to be a normal guy. And then for some reason that worked way better. Is that kind of what you're experiencing?
100%. And like, that was another thing too. Like when I was at Extra Work, like the story that I like to share is when I did my tryout match, like first of all, the first thing that said, they're like, all right, who wants to go? I hopped the guardrail before they were even done saying who wants to go. I was like, I'm going to go first. Cause if anybody goes long, at least they'll get to see me. So first of all, I wanted to show initiative. And then I remember like, this is kind of I want to give this comparison cause this is one of my favorites. So in my tryout match, I ended my match specifically to try and pop everybody with the end of days. Because I was like, that there's a Baron and a Darin. Half you guys are my friends. I'm going to hit his finish in my tryout match. And it got over. It was memorable. It was whatever. One of the guys came up to me afterwards who was an extra. And he was like, he's also done Extra Work like a few times. And he tried to like brag about it. Like he's like the dude they go to.
Mhm.
And he was like, so did you ask him about that? I was like, no. And he's like, well, you know, like, are you worried about getting heat for that? And I was like, I don't think I will. I think I'll be okay. And just because, like, we had a good interaction, we played it up, and he's like, yeah, I really think you should have asked about that. I was like, oh, you do you? Well, maybe that's what you'll do. Later that day, he sat in the crowd at SmackDown, like, after the show, during the dark match, Facebook living himself on his phone, marking out to the match. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to do what you do.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So wait, so say that again. He did what in Facebook Live himself? Like he was actually ringside while it was live?
So he went out through one of the back areas and he got like pretty close to the ring, like third, fourth row, had his phone and was like recording himself like selfie style in front of like the match. And it was like the dark match, he's recording himself. He's like, this is so cool. And we were like, did he just really, like, somebody, one of the guys who's friends with him was like, I think he just put this online. I was like,
oh my God.
So I was like, well, I think I'm ahead of that guy. You know, like,
oh my God.
This is a guy who's done extra work and all this stuff. And I was like, maybe there's a reason why this is all you do. Maybe this is a reason why this is your plateau. Because, and also, like, some of the stuff, you know, like, this is another, like, personal thing that was funny because, like, Cesaro and I, we've been friends for a while. So, like, the thing is he was in his way or something like that after our little segment. And he bumped into Cesaro and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean. And Cesaro was just like, dude, get the hell out of the way. Like, just, like, don't apologize. Funny. Get out of my way.
That's so funny.
And then I walked by him and I was like, hey, man, good luck out there tonight. And he's like, good to see you. And, like, high five. And I was like, yeah, take that.
Oh, my God. Oh, my, Darin, that's so funny. And I didn't know that. This is the first time I heard that story. I've never told this story. I'm not going to say any names, but something like that happened to me. I did it wasn't a dark match. I did an ECW match one time. And I was at the show and we were doing the afternoon workouts. And everything was going well, and they're like, okay, you're going to be the one that has the match on ECW. Come to the back, and there was another extra, just like what you were saying. There was an extra who had gone all the time. He's like, yeah, man, I go all the. This is so cool. And then he goes, yeah, man, I'm going to see you out there. I'm like, oh, is it like because they were debuting a guy who's a big guy, and I'm like, oh, is it like a 2-on-1 where he squashes both? He's like, no, man, I'm going to see you out there. I'm like, I don't know what that means. So, like, I thought it was my match with this guy. I'm like, maybe they added him. I get out to the ring. They send me out during commercial break because I was going to be already in the ring. Darin, this is a true story. The guy had purchased front row tickets, was in the front row hard cam side with a WWE t-shirt. I'm going, hey, what's up, man? Oh, my God, man. Hey, what's up? Hey, you made it, right? He got booked as an extra and then used his payday to then go to Ticketmaster and buy front row seats. I was like, oh my, and I watched him when I was in the ring during commercial break. He was in the front row with his buddies, just marking out and going crazy. I was like, this is unbelievable. So, dude, I'm with you. I've never shared that story before, but it felt relevant at the time. So, if you're listening, don't be that guy.
Exactly.
Do not be that guy. So anyway, Darin, man, thanks so much for your time. If you were to tell anybody, like, you've done coaching, you've done double your bookings, you've been with me for a while, what would you say to anybody that's been thinking about doing this, but just hasn't been sure, or maybe has been on the fence or doesn't really know what it is? What's some of the advice that you'd give them as far as like what the coaching offers, what's double your bookings offers, and just what some of the insights that you learned can offer and help them out with?
I want to say, if you feel stuck, if you ever feel like you've been stuck at a certain point and you're looking to get to the next level, because I always think that your third year is the one where, like, nothing's really new anymore. And if it starts to become kind of old hat, you feel like you get stuck, and you can go one of two ways. Either you're going to hate it or you're going to find a way out. And if you're looking for a way, an easy way to, like, change your mindset and do this and figure it out so you're not miserable, first of all, the Inner Squared Circle is full of, like, great advice for things, from people that you see who do successful stuff to people who you can associate with to people that you can find as just dudes being good dudes in wrestling, trying to help out, because that's what I see everybody in that group as. And also, like, at least, because do you still do, like, at least the one free consultation thing?
Yeah. So what I do is I do these online seminars that you can watch, totally for free, about how to do this, how to do that. And then if they want to take advantage, like, oh, well, how does this apply to me? Because that's a pre-recorded or it's a live thing, but it's for, like, multiple people. If they want to know how it applies to them specifically, they can call me one-on-one, or even just through the group if they want advice. I do 45 minutes individual with people.
And that's, and I say, if you're at any point, if you are feeling as though this is like, you want to try it out, at least take advantage of that, because what's, like, again, what's the worst that could happen? Like, but you'll feel like I remember our first conversation, I felt like everything was such a change, because I don't know if you remember this, but you and I had this moment where, like, you worded this, and I had waited, I tried for years to word this, like, why are people who are so successful and have done the top thing in this company, why do they end up like depressed, committing suicide, all this stuff? And like, you think about it and you're like, when you feel down on yourself, you're like, but there are guys who have been way more successful than me. Why is that? And we talked about fulfillment, and, we talked about what it is, your needs and all that stuff. And I feel this group gets that on track. And then also, like, I feel like everybody who's done the Double Your Bookings seminar and who has done the Double Your Bookings coaching has found ways to improve at least leaps and bounds on one specific category. It's funny. Not only have I had more success with emails, but I've had more success with my social media. I've had more success in my real job. So just in general, like, there's certain things I don't fear anymore. I don't fear uncertainty. Certain things I'm able to make work. I know how to know my value, and knowing your value. Like, here's the other thing. You could have somebody read, no reply your email. But like in my case, when I try and be funny with it, hey, at least if somebody read, no replied, or replied to an email that's hilarious and I didn't get the booking, they still read it. So
yes,
victory, me.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing on this one. You find more so the victories that will keep you motivated to keep doing this, and you will see, you won't become mundane. You won't be stuck in a rut. The inner squared circle, the Double Your Bookings, talking with you specifically, you get to know what people want out of this, and you are there to help them. And you have helped people not get one goal, you've helped them get to different goals, whether it's they get to be trainers and help their friends in a different country, whether it's to get to WWE, whether it's to get to Japan, whether it's just to be happy, whether it's outside of wrestling. You've done great jobs to put people on that way just by breaking the mindset of what pro wrestling is. And that could help so many guys. And when you see that first light bulb click and you realize that this is for real, like, it's crazy. It's almost like the upside down. You flip and you start seeing the world so many, or I guess it's like when you take the red pill or the blue pill, and you took the blue pill and you're like, oh, this is what the world looks like. I can stay ahead of this. And that's what I think this group does really well.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, man. And hey, for you got your dream house by the lake, and I remember getting that. Dude, I got the dream house by the lake, and now I'm engaged. I'm like, I love that, man. That's amazing. And yeah, it's almost like a Rain Man thing where it's really fun for me. What I live for, what you said, is the moments where those light bulbs go off with guys, because these are guys. I get these calls all the time where I'm ready to quit. I'm done. I don't know what I'm going to do. All my bookings, like you specifically, all my bookings are gone. What do I do? I'm not booked anymore. All the companies went out of business. Or I get people being like, if this doesn't work in another month, I'm done. Or I wrote 75 emails this month and everybody ignored me. 100% of the people ignored me. And I get these panic phone calls. And then now I start to get the texts or the phone calls. It's like, oh my God, the light bulb went off. Or I can actually hear it over the phone because it's happened so often. I can hear the moment when somebody's tense and then they take that breath and their shoulders relax. And I go, they just got it. Something just changed. And then like, oh my God, I just went to Japan for the first time. That's what I live for, man. So thank you so much for being able to share today, share your experience. I think it's going to help a lot of guys too, because like I said, it's not like you're coming off this gigantic 5-year, 10-year run on TV. You're a guy that's been doing this grassroots for a lot of years, man. And it's working for you. It's clicked for you. And
also too, the other thing that I'm really looking forward to, and where I feel like this group has helped me, is I'm looking in 2020 to be what my new goals in 2019 are now the old hat for 2020, 2021. And like, that's exciting. Like, it's cool to do this, but I'm looking forward to like the other goals that keep it exciting once this is established. And I feel like I got the tools for it.
That's amazing. So, hey, Darin, if people wanted to call you, book you, get in touch with you, how can they find you?
Honestly, like normally the best way is Facebook is honestly the best, because like either I'm running, so I'm the worst on like a phone call, but like normally the best way is through like Facebook is like the best way to hit me up. And I guess if not that, like it's just Darin Corbin TV @gmail is the other one that works out really well.
Very cool, guys. So you heard it here. Here's Darin Corbin. He is a road warrior, just like you guys, doing the independent scene in the Midwest, in the Chicago, Minneapolis area. He went from 2017, losing all of his bookings, not knowing what he's going to do, to now it's 2018. It's September 2018 when we record this interview. He is booked through 2019. People have paid him up front. He has doubled his rates, and he has a waiting list for promotions looking to book him. He's been a part of my coaching program and a part of your Double Your Bookings 8-week online seminar. If you guys want information on that, well, first of all, we have the Inner Squared Circle Facebook group. It's totally free. We post blogs, we post memes, we post articles, we post advice. It's totally free to join. If you're interested in Double Your Bookings, Facebook message me privately or email innersquaredcircle@gmail.com. That's innersquaredcircle@gmail.com. We have an 8-week Double Your Bookings program. It's online. You do it at your own pace. It shows you how to go from no bookings to basically what Darin's doing, more or less. We also do one-on-one coaching where we do mindset work, and we get rid of all of the mental blocks that have been holding you back. And other than that, we also have Instagram at Inner Squared Circle Instagram. Check us out there. We post 1-minute videos, wrestling advice, things of that nature. So with that being said, Darin, thank you so much, buddy. I'll talk to you soon. And guys, I'll see you on the Inner Squared Circle. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you.